Okay, good afternoon members and welcome to the special hybrid meeting of Angus Council. I would remind all attendees that this meeting is being recorded and webcast live on the Council's YouTube channel. I have agreed the attendance of some members remotely and would remind all remote attendees to mute their microphones when not speaking. For any members of the public watching, please note that all the public committee reports, including details of specific recommendations, are available on the Council's website. And at this point, I'm going to ask Councillor David Cheap to speak on the sad passing of the late Peter Murphy. Thank you.
Thank you, Provost, on this busy day for allowing me the opportunity to ask Angus Council to recognise the recent sad passing of former Councillor and Deputy Provost Peter Murphy and to acknowledge his significant contribution to so many during his extraordinary life. Born in Aberdeen in 1932, Peter grew up with a desire to succeed, conscious of his own family and others' relative poverty. He was always competitive, and his success at school during the years of the Second World War and beyond proved just that. Initially attending Mile End School, he went on to Aberdeen Grammar, where he thrived despite feeling on the wrong end of a class divide. He acknowledged the focus and encouragement of his teachers and their dedication, and this is perhaps what drove him to do exactly the same when he became a teacher himself. And so many of his former pupils have gone on to say just this about him. Having achieved a bursary, Peter went on to study English at Aberdeen University and never considered anything other than becoming a teacher. He taught at Torrey Academy and his old school Aberdeen Grammar, and then went on to become principal teacher of English at Summerhill Academy, and would go on in his retirement to write a biography of the renowned former head teacher of that school, R.F. Mackenzie. He saw education and schooling as being much more than a place to churn children through an exam factory. Rather, he wanted to develop them and give them opportunities in life regardless of their academic ability. His first head teacher role was at Logie Secondary School in Dundee, and this appointment brought Peter and his family to arrive in Carnoustie, his eldest son John joining my school year at Kinloch Primary School. However, it was his appointment as the first headmaster of Whitfield High School that Peter saw as being the high point of his teaching career, giving him a chance to put his values into practice and mould his school in a manner he thought it should be run. He was absolutely dedicated to it, rarely taking any more than 1 week's holiday off a year, attending all school community events, school theatre, and championing school sports each weekend. In 1993, Peter made his first foray into local politics, becoming the first Labour councillor in Carnoustie since the Second World War, and was duly elected to Angus Council. Typical of Peter, he did nothing by half, and as acknowledged by others, threw himself into the role. His wife and 4 children, and latterly grandchildren, were never safe from being encouraged out to pound the streets on any campaign trail he considered needing attention and worthy of sorting. Although an Angus councillor, he was a true town councillor who worked tirelessly for the residents of Carnoustie and District Ward. His achievements locally were numerous, and his interest in helping local community organisations, projects and sports clubs was second to none. Peter served as a councillor for 13 years, and during some of that time undertook the role of Deputy Provost and Chairman of his local Labour Party. In his retirement, he enjoyed looking after his beloved bees, gardening, developing his latest concoction of whatever homebrew came along, bowling and running. He never stood still, and I believe he even completed the Edinburgh Marathon, aged 81. Dedicated to his extended family, he always had a keen eye to assist with any cause that he felt needed his attention, and he packed so much into his 93 years. Our condolences are with Peter's widow Margaret, his 4 children and their respective partners and grandchildren. He embodied the phrase, a true gentleman and public servant and a friend to many, and he'll be sadly missed. So thank you, Provost, and if I may, can I suggest this council shows their appreciation of Peter Murphy's contribution to Angus in the usual manner.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cheap, and well said. Now, agenda item number 1, Mrs Forsyth. Are there any apologies, please?
No apologies, Provost.
Thank you very much. Item 2, declarations of interest or statements of transparency. Are there any? No, I don't see it. That's fine. So agenda item number 3 is notice of motion in terms of Standing Order 24.1, and it's a motion, you've got it in front of you, by Councillor Speed. Councillor Speed, do you have a seconder?
Provost.
Yeah, sorry, Lynn.
Point of order, please.
Yes, of course.
I refer to Standing Order 10.1. Given that Councillor Speed brought a very similar motion to Policy and Resources Committee last week, which was passed unanimously, surely this motion falls within the 6-month rule. Is Councillor Speed really asking the Council Leader to write yet another letter on the same topic to the Scottish Government within the space of a week? I would suggest this is incompetent, but of course it's up to you, Provost.
I'll just take some advice, Councillor Devine. I'm being advised that Councillor Speed's motion is competent, so I'm going to allow her to talk. Thank you. Councillor Speed, who's your... Oh, it's Councillor Cowdy. OK, thank you.
Thank you, Provost. Colleagues, we are here today under the weight of a truth that is becoming harder and harder to ignore. The system that we are working within is broken, not because of the people in it, and certainly not because of the communities we serve, but because we are being asked to make decisions that no responsible tier of government should ever be forced to make. We are at risk of being in a position where we are prioritising budget law over the very legislation that exists to protect people within education, additional support needs provision, social care, housing and homelessness, child and adult support and protection, roads and planning. Laws that Parliament passed because they recognised that these are not optional extras, they are the foundations of a fair society. This system is deteriorating to the point where human need is treated as a cost pressure and human suffering is treated as an inconvenience. Fairness is not a passive thing. It does not happen by accident. It must be chosen, especially when the choices are hard. And today, the choices are brutally hard. We are being asked to weigh one statutory duty against others, to decide which legal obligation matters most, and to ration rights that were never meant to be rationed. This is not responsible government. This is a system in crisis. We are the ones that stand closest to the people. We see the impact of every cut, every unmet need, and every delay in support. My roots, like many of yours, are in the communities that understand hardship, but also understand solidarity. Communities that taught me that fairness is not something you fight for, not something that you wait for. Communities know that dignity is not a luxury, it is a baseline of a decent society. And the truth in these papers is simple. We are not being given enough money to do all of that safely. The risk reporting in front of us is very clear. The pressures on this council are growing, the risks are growing, and our ability to meet our statutory duties is being pushed to breaking point. That's not politics. That's the absolute reality we are faced with. We have the duty to document what is happening, to speak honestly about the gap between what we are funded to do and what we are legally required to do, and to refuse to normalise the unacceptable. We may not be able to fix the system today, but we can take a stance and send a clear message to our governments that enough is enough. These are not our choices, and that local government needs fairer funding.
Thank you very much. Any questions of Councillor Speed? Councillor Cowdy, do you wish to speak? Yes, carry on.
Thanks very much. This settlement falls far short of what is needed to sustain essential local services. These are not my words or the words of Councillor Speed. This comes straight from COSLA. It's part of a statement by COSLA spokesperson for Resources, Councillor Ricky Bell, reacting to the Scottish Government's most recent budget settlement for local government. We can argue between ourselves, and I'm sure we will, about how this chronic underfunding situation has come to pass. I imagine some will lay this squarely at the feet of the Scottish Government, while others will argue that the Scottish budget is heavily influenced by UK government decisions because it relies on a block grant as well as being its own devolved tax revenues. But quite frankly, in this meeting today, none of that is my primary concern. I sit here as a member of Angus Council, who is very, very worried about how this fundamentally broken funding system impacts on my constituents every single day. Things need to change. They need to change now. I think this issue is important enough to warrant the Leader of the Council writing 2 letters, and I'm delighted to support this motion.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? No? Is the motion agreed? Thank you. Okay, members, agenda item number 4 is the Revenue and Capital Budget Outturn 25-26. These reports are for noting as they form part of the motion and amendment. Do we agree to note? Thank you. Agenda item number 5 is the Council Delivery Plan 26-27, and it's a report by the Chief Executive, and I will ask Mrs Lindsay to introduce the report. Thank you.
Provost and Councillors, item 5 presents our Council delivery plan for the coming year, and the accompanying operational annex sets out how we will deliver services in the year ahead, subject obviously to the financial decisions that are taken in the Chamber today. The plan reflects our agreed strategic direction through the Council Plan 23 to 28 and the Angus Community Plan 22 to 2030. It's informed by the themes that we heard through the public budget consultation. This report focuses on the 8 priority areas that matter most to our communities: housing, education, economic growth, transport, well-being and our environment, working with communities and sustaining public services. If approved, we will update the documents that you see today to reflect your decisions and publish the final versions. I commend the delivery plan and appreciate the work of colleagues in supporting pulling this together to yourselves today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs Lindsay. Any questions in relation to the delivery plan? No. Any comments? Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Provost. And this is really just about logistics. I suspect the microphone wasn't on there for Mrs Lindsay. Struggled to hear you, Catherine, at the back. Was it on? Yeah. So maybe just a wee bit quiet then. And don't I normally have a problem hearing you, but I certainly did today. And I really do want to hear you.
Councillor Cheap, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Provost. It's good to read the full plan here. I think a couple of things that came out for me. One was in the consultation, and it's quite clear, and we do put it in writing, that 70% of the responses that came back said that they didn't believe that their council tax was delivering good value for Angus. And I think that should make us all, sit up and think about that again, about comms and delivering on what the population want from Angus Council, not what Angus Council wants to deliver to the population. I think that's something to think about going forward, especially at a time of budgets. And the second thing was really in the operational annex. I think it was on the, forgive me, I think I've lost the page on it. When it was on page 76 in the workforce plan, and the strategic approach there highlights a number of nine points. When we look at the employee health and well-being, there's not a single mention of the sickness absence rate in Angus Council and the financial impact and more that has for the council. And I'm not sure why that's not in the strategy for a specific point being made for all of that. We know that costs a lot of money. I've asked time and time again as to how much it costs us, but I've never had an answer yet in my 9 years. And I really think, again, going back to what the council, the people are saying about the value of the council tax, we need this taken into account, and I think it should be in our strategic focus for a work plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cheap. Anyone else? Well, this report also forms part of the motions and amendments, but is the report agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Agenda item number 6 is the Provisional Revenue and Capital Budgets 26-27 and beyond. And I'm going to ask Mrs Sharon Faulkner. She'll give a brief summary of the views expressed at the meeting held earlier today. Thank you.
Thank you, Provost, and good afternoon, elected members. The Central Consultative met earlier today and considered the Council Delivery Plan, the Finance and Change Plan and Workforce Plan, along with reports related to provisional revenue and capital budgets for 2026-27 and beyond. Unison and EIS representatives were in attendance. The Assistant Chief Executive Governance introduced the various reports and no questions were asked at that stage. Chris Boyle, Angus Branch Secretary for Unison, presented a detailed statement to the committee which reiterated key messages and areas of concern that had previously been brought forward to members' attention over many years of budget cuts, since 2013-2014. He welcomed the opportunity this year for trade unions to attend Policy and Budget Steering Group to hear the detailed budget proposals in advance of the Central Consultative Committee meeting. Unison highlighted the view that councillors have the opportunity to influence change with regards to underfunding of local government and reiterated the desire of trade unions to work in collaboration with COSLA and local authorities in this regard. Unison welcomed the motion being presented to Council today by Councillor Speed around funding of local government. Unison highlighted areas of concern, particularly in relation to increasing demand for social care and special needs services. A number of questions were raised in the Unison statement, including service concessions impact, changes in social care staffing, early learning, and school transport changes. The Assistant Chief Executive Governance and Director of Education and Lifelong Learning addressed these questions. Unison welcomed the opportunity to address the committee along with trade union colleagues and referenced the newly agreed Joint Trade Union Recognition Agreement as a positive collaborative step. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs Faulkner. Members, you have the reports in front of you. Does anyone have any questions on items B to S in this report? No questions. Any comments? No comments. Is the report noted then? Thank you very much. Members, agenda item number 7 is the administration budget proposal in terms of Standing Order 4. I'm going to ask Councillor Meehan to move the budget proposals. Thank you. And do you have a seconder?
My seconder is Councillor Gold.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Provost. Provost, members and colleagues, today we meet to set a budget at a time of extraordinary challenges for local government, not just here in Angus, but across Scotland as a whole. The pressures facing councils have been clearly described over recent months: rising demand for services, workforce pressures, and a funding landscape that grows tighter each year following years of cuts and restructuring. Yet despite this, Angus Council continues to show leadership, stability and ambition. Our task today is to approve a budget that is responsible, balanced and deliverable, and which protects the services people rely on across our communities. This administration proposal set out formally in Report 84/26 and supporting appendices reflect months of detailed work, engagement with officers and constructive discussions. It is not an easy budget, but one that takes steps to rebalance and readdress the situation we find ourselves in Angus. Following years of low council tax rates, we are one of the lowest in the country and have faced extensive limitations in what we can deliver because of this. I want to acknowledge the contribution of officers across all directorates and of elected members who have participated through the Policy and Budget Strategy Group in the past months. I'll start with the financial context. Members will be aware that the financial environment facing councils is unprecedented, with national projections showing significant pressures across 2026 to 2028. Our own discussions, including those within our group, highlight the scale of the challenges we must navigate. Nevertheless, Angus enters this budget cycle with clarity of purpose and a commitment to prudent financial stewardship. Moving to our budget approach, the administration has taken a clear approach. We will protect core services. Our proposals largely align with the officer recommendations and maintain stability across directorates. As confirmed in the administration budget paper, we propose to accept officers' recommendations on budget issues and savings. These are in budget documents section 52 to 50.20. This is a deliberate choice to avoid disruption and to ensure continuity. In total, the Council faces a revenue budget funding gap of over £14 million in 2026-27. This is reduced to 11.5 once the available increases in Scottish Government grant is accounted for. We have agreed the 4.2 million of budget issues recommended by officers in the revenue budget, due mainly to general inflation, and are providing a further 7 million to cover the cost of staff pay inflation. An 11.5 million gap would need a council tax increase of 16%, which isn't acceptable. However, this money needs to come from somewhere. So our budget includes 5.5 million of savings. That's on top of the 100 million already saved over the years to reduce the increase in council tax, which would otherwise be needed. In terms of savings, we're only implementing those that we believe to be the most tolerable. We're increasing most fees and charges levied by the Council and our partners in Angus Alive and the Angus Health and Social Care Partnership to help cover rising costs. We will make targeted, meaningful investments. Where we do propose changes, they are focused, affordable and evidence-based. Our proposed changes are infrastructure investment. The administration budget includes an additional 0.75 million to support capital investment through the Angus Public Infrastructure Fund to ensure we can move swiftly on major projects relating to our buildings, roads, bridges and other infrastructure. This uplift to the infrastructure fund will provide an additional spending capacity of 16 million to be used where and when required to support our infrastructure. We plan to front load this spending with spending of 8 million in 2026, 4 million in 27-28 and 4 million in 28-29. It should be noted that these annual spends are subject to many variables and are meant to be indicative only. Moving on to roads maintenance budget. Given recent weather conditions and low temperatures, our roads have taken a further bashing, with road conditions deteriorating even further. To help alleviate this, we will spend 13.237 million across our revenues and capital budget on roads, which includes an additional 244,000 in 2026-27. Moving to the Environmental Regeneration Fund. This is partly ongoing and one-off elements. For some time now, we've been aware of the slow rundown of our town centres and village public spaces. To help address this, we have provided £100,000 revenue funding on a one-off basis for 26-27 and an additional £500,000 capital over 3 years. 200,000 in 26-27, 200,000 in 27-28 and 100,000 in 28-29. This will be used to provide grants for community groups and community councils for projects to improve their community surroundings. Further details on the use of this fund will be brought to committee in due course. In addition, we will provide £20,000 on an ongoing basis for projects that deal with community issues, for example, supporting education on dog fouling. Moving to complex care transition fund, we have already introduced a new policy to recognise that those who've spent time in the care system face challenges where others may not. In addition to this, we know that the transition from child to adult is a complex one, and we are increasing funding in this area to better support young people. A considerable number of challenges currently exist at the interface between children's services and adult services, particularly where care packages are complex and expensive. To help address this issue, we will create a transition fund to support existing budgets and help manage these transitions. £500,000 will be invested by the Council, with a further £500,000 contribution anticipated from Angus Health and Social Care Partnership. A total investment of £1 million. This will be funded as part of the administration's strategy for the General Reserve Fund. I would point out that Angus Health and Social Care Partnership will also require to ratify their contribution at a future integrated joint board. Moving on to staff capacity issues. Across the Council, several teams are struggling to deliver core services and improve efficiency due to capacity issues caused by years of constant cuts and change. These issues can arise for several reasons, including unfilled vacancies, unavoidable core work taking all available time, and new or additional burdens being added to already stretched teams. To help address this, we will provide a fund of £1 million, which services will be able to draw on to provide temporary resources for a specific task or project. We would expect this funding to be used over the next 12 to 24 months, depending on the nature of the need. This will be funded from the General Reserve Fund. Glendall Ranger Centre. Members will be aware that this Ranger Centre will be returned to Angus Council from Angus Alive. This administration will commit to retaining the Ranger Centre, and this will be supported with a spend of £30,000 per annum on an ongoing basis. We will ask officers to work with partners like the Cairngorm National Park Authority to look at how the facility can best be used. Moving on to holiday food and fun. This service provides a wide range of fun activities, childcare and targeted support to children and families during the summer holidays. The aim is to support low-income households to access free activities, childcare and food during the summer school holidays, recognising the importance of widening the opportunities of children to play, socialise, get active and access a range of activities that broaden their experience. We will continue support for this valuable project by investing £100,000 on a one-off basis to support the project for a further year. Economic development capacity. Our economic development team, known as Business Angus, drives local economic growth by supporting businesses with funding, land and advice. Key priorities include fostering innovation, supporting manufacturing and green energy. They focus on key sectors such as food, drink and tourism to create jobs. We've been aware for some time that this service is experiencing capacity issues, so we will provide additional funding of £56,000 on an ongoing basis to provide one additional member of staff to help address these issues. Moving to Graduates Modern Apprenticeship Programme. Supporting our young people into training and work is a core area of focus for us as an administration, and we are increasing the funding available for graduate modern apprenticeships to £2 million. This is a further investment of £500,000 on top of the £1.5 million agreed in last year's budget, which can be utilised for modern apprenticeship positions and also traineeships for professional grade positions. This will be funded from the General Reserve Fund. Excuse me. Moving to planning and enforcement. Like our economic development team, our planning and enforcement team have experienced capacity issues and been unable to fully enforce breaches of planning rules. To help address this, we will provide additional funding of £56,000 on an ongoing basis to provide one additional member of staff to help address these issues. Welfare rights and council tax reduction take-up. To help support the most vulnerable members of our communities, we will reintroduce the Maximise Angus project in our schools at a cost of £70,000 per annum on an ongoing basis. We anticipate this will generate around £700,000 per year in additional income or financial gains for Angus citizens. We will further provide funding of £25,000 on a one-off basis to help improve the take-up of council tax reduction scheme. This will help reduce outstanding council tax arrears by helping ensure that those who are entitled to a reduction know how and where to apply to receive one. Education. Education is the biggest spend in the Angus Council budget. This administration is determined to protect services in this area from extensive cuts in the face of a challenging landscape. Our focus as an administration is raising attainment across our schools, and we cannot achieve this without support for attendance. So we're investing £175,000 in providing 4 new school inclusion attendance officers in a pilot project for a period of 1 year. These officers will work with children and young people with engagement and attendance challenges to break down barriers to their learning and progress. This investment will take the number of school inclusion attendance officers to 8 across the council. We will also fund a school and pupil safety pilot project, investing £25,000 on a one-off basis into a school pupil safety pilot. This fund will be used to provide items to help ensure that school pupils walking to and from school can be seen by drivers of vehicles. For example, fluorescent armbands. Moving to wheelchair accessible taxi grant. Work within Angus has shown that there is a shortfall in the provision of wheelchair accessible taxis. To help address this, we will invest £50,000 on a one-off basis to create a grant fund to provide financial assistance to taxi operators wishing to purchase a wheelchair accessible vehicle. This will go some way to addressing a clear need from these individuals who are unable to make use of conventional taxis. Moving to capital programme and long-term investment. We're rightly ambitious for Angus. The administration has backed a strategy to enhance borrowing capacity and front-load investment, enable meaningful progress by 2027. Our budget for 26-27, we plan to spend £48.6 million on capital spend, which includes the Angus Public Infrastructure Fund element. This administration has emphasised the importance of securing visible improvements in infrastructure, economic development and community assets. This budget delivers on that shared ambition. Council tax and reserves. The final position on reserves and council tax is as follows. Starting with reserves, we plan to use all the uncommitted reserves of £10.906 million officers have advised are available to support our budget proposals. We have used reserves to fund some one-off spends. However, we have not used reserves to pay for ongoing costs to balance the budget. I would point out that this is the first time in 9 years that our reserves have not been used in this way. As already stated in my introduction, we face some difficult years ahead in terms of our finances, saving reserves for when it is most prudent to use them makes financial sense. Our guiding principle is that we will only draw from reserves where it is responsible, sustainable and in the public interest. Moving to council tax. To continue to provide the services that communities want and expect, we need to set the council tax that will provide the revenue required. Angus remains one of the lowest council tax in terms of tax, at 6th lowest of the 32 councils in Scotland and 4th lowest of mainland councils. This has had a bigger impact on service levels in Angus than most other councils. Since 2013, we have made savings of more than £100 million, 27% of our budget. And our comparatively lower council tax means other councils will likely have to apply lower levels in percentage terms of cuts to their budget. Had Angus Council as council tax matched the Scottish average from 1997 to 2025, we would have accrued an additional cumulative income of £108 million, roughly equivalent to the savings we've been forced to make in the last 13 years. If we are to provide the services that we are legally required to, then our only course of action is to balance our budget is increased government funding, which has not been forthcoming, use our reserves, or by increasing the council tax. Council tax is a blunt tool, as it only provides 19% of our overall funding, the rest coming via central government. Taking into account all the areas of investment in our services and the statutory responsibilities, we need to increase council tax for 2026-27 by 9.38%. This will increase a Band D annual charge to £1,598.65 per year, an increase of £137.13 per year, which is equivalent to £2.64 a week at Band D. Based on what we know from other councils' budget decisions, we expect council tax in Angus for 26-27 to remain one of the lowest in Scotland. To finish, colleagues, setting a budget is never simple, but through collaboration, discipline and a shared determination to deliver for the people of Angus, we have shaped our budget that is both credible and forward-looking. Despite external pressures, this budget provides further funding for our infrastructure and roads, where we face huge challenges, protection for our education service in the face of challenging funding landscapes, support for our young people through apprenticeships and care transition funds and summer activities, support for economic development to enhance our council services for the future, protection for our most vulnerable through sustained social care funding and enhancement of our welfare rights provision, support our capacity in economic development and planning, funding where it is needed so Angus Council can function effectively, and supports the long-term affordability of our capital plan. This is a budget that faces reality and honesty and refuses to lose ambition. I want to thank members for the constructive engagement over the past months, including your feedback, challenge and ideas shared through discussions. Balancing the budget is never an easy task. This is the right budget for Angus, responsible, ambitious and focused on delivery. I commend this administration budget to the Council. Can officers now please circulate the administration's budget motion? Thank you, Provost.
Thank you very much, Councillor Meakin. Councillor Vaughan, do you wish to say anything as a seconder? Oh, Ian, sorry. Councillor Gall.
Thank you, Provost. It seems like only a few months ago we were all sat in this very chamber setting the 2025-26 budget. I'd like to thank all officers for their help in creating the budgets today, but particularly Mr Warmer and his team. Every year we speak about how the next budget setting will be very difficult, but Mr Warmer continues to steer Angus Council through some very choppy waters. I'd also like to thank all members of the cross-chamber PBSG group. for their input, which is a roadmap to budget setting day. We all know the backdrop to today. Savage cuts of more than 100 million of annual savings since 2013-14, making Angus Council a very different council than it was only 10 years ago. Angus Council, small in size, is responsible for 1.6 billion in road assets, not to mention the 452 bridges, many more than 100 years old. That said, we could spend all day pointing fingers, but the reality is we are all here today to set a balanced budget to see Angus Council through 26-27. Councillor Meakin has spoken at length about the administration's proposed budgets, which I won't indulge in repeating, but I do want to touch on a couple of areas I feel are very important for long-term Angus Council. Several councils have already set their budgets for 2026-27, Moray and Aberdeenshire at 10%, Argyll and Bute at 9.7%, Falkirk 9.5%, Stirling, Scottish Borders, North Ayrshire, Midlothian, Dumfries and Galway all 8.5% or more. So not only is Angus Council not an anomaly with our proposed council tax rate increase of 9.38%, but we see that every council is raiding reserves or hiking council tax just to keep the lights on. Coming into 2026-27 budget setting, we know the Angus Council had the fourth lowest council tax rate in mainland Scotland. We have seen many years of council tax freezes or caps, so there's context, but this is all historical and we can't catch up with the cumulative impact, but we can address this going forward. As budgets continue to be squeezed and demand for council service continue to rise, council tax is the only real lever councils have to fill gaps. And we must also remember that council tax only makes up around 19% of Angus Council's budget. In the wider context, when we look at our neighbours, Dundee pay 9% more council tax, with Perth and Kinross and Aberdeenshire paying 5% more council tax than Angus. And that is worth millions each year in extra budget, and we need to be mindful of this. The medium-term outlook looks particularly challenging, with a real-term funding cut of nearly £500 million from Scottish councils to 28-29, and for the first time we will see council funding fall below 25% of Scottish Government total funding, reducing from 26.4 to 24.8 by 28-29. By supporting this administration budget, we would be passing the first budget in 9 years without touching reserves, and as budget setting for 27-28 and 28-29 look particularly difficult, we can't kick the can down the street for someone else to deal with when we are still looking at £15 million of funding gap in the next 2 years. The proposed £750,000 top-up to the infrastructure fund would give Angus Council an additional £16 million of spending power over 3 years. We know the huge savings Angus Council has successfully achieved over the last decade, but there's a cost to that. Like every other council, Angus Council is not well positioned to deal with unplanned weather events and damage. Budgets are so tight and screwed down, we become very vulnerable in these circumstances and become almost solely dependent on government intervention. The additional £16 million fund to add to the previous administration's £21.6 million fund agreed in February 25 gives a significant financial lever to support key areas of coastal erosion and flooding across Angus, as well as support targeted infrastructure spends. Although there has been no additional funding asked by officers for 26-27, it is vital to build up a substantial fund so Angus Council can act on its own terms, known as a funding package ready to deploy when needed. I'm here today to second Councillor Meakin's proposed budget, administration's budget, and I ask Chamber to support this budget too. The next couple of years look daunting, but I believe this budget offers a responsible position to set up Angus as well as possible to navigate the coming years. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Gall, and we obviously all have the budget papers on our screens. So at the moment, we're being asked to note that in accordance with Standing Order 4, the budget proposals set out in the report that have been submitted by the administration group. Do we agree to note? Thank you. Agenda item number 8 is an alternative budget proposal, and it will be moved by Councillor Duff. And can I ask Councillor Duff at this stage, does he have a seconder? Thank you. It's Councillor MacDonald. OK, Councillor Duff, thank you.
Thank you, Provost. As usual, I'd like to thank Mr Lorham and his team for support during the budget process, and other senior officers that we've had discussions with, and particular thanks to Gillian Woodcock, who supported the opposition budget, and thanks to my group colleagues for their valuable input. I'm not going to repeat a lot of the things that the proposer and seconder have said, because many of them I would agree with. I want to perhaps focus on some areas of difference and some comments. The revenue grant from government is in sort of real terms 0.8% better than we had expected, and that's given us a slightly better position than we were predicting a few months ago. Our approach this year has two principles. First, to ensure the council tax rise was as modest as we could make it, and secondly, to minimise use of council reserves. Last year we saw a high council tax increase of 11%, and that was considered necessary. This year's more favourable government settlement gives us an opportunity to wean ourselves off using reserves. And there I would agree with Councillor Meehan's point that he wasn't using reserves to balance the budget. We think that that's a responsible and prudent course of action to avoid using reserves to balance the budget this year. We are aware that the next 2 years may be less favourable, and are aware of the pressures on the Health and Social Care Partnership that are hitting councils all over Scotland. This pressure has not hit Angus yet, but we need to be prepared for this, and we think maintaining our reserves is a sensible strategy. Therefore, our budget asks are very few. We believe that we should baseline the holiday food and fun project rather than using reserves. It's currently shown in Table 3 on page 311 as a reserve, and that obviously means that's one-off money. We believe that project should be funded from council tax so that we can guarantee it continues. It's, if you like, a technical difference this year, but it would have an impact on subsequent years. If we get into the happy situation that we don't need it, we could take it as a budget saving, but I think it is required at the moment, and we should put it in the base budget. Moving on to the Angus Public Infrastructure Fund, we are putting in £300,000, and I'll discuss that later under the capital section. We've assigned £20,000 for a consultant to assist in reviewing the best way of providing a ranger service in our country parks, and this will be taken from unassigned reserves. I want briefly to mention Angus Alive. I note that the smoothing of savings and the management fee over 3 years, and that will provide some relief to the charity. However, it's clear that the council will need to make decisions about the trust footprint and give clear direction what its scope should be and the direction of travel for the management fee ahead. That's perhaps a task for the next council. I'd make some comments about the administration judgment and what I feel is their lack of prudence. On the Angus Health and Social Care Partnership, the reserve strategy on page 311 references a sum of 250 for the Complex Care Transition Fund, and that table is essentially officer recommendations. Let's be honest about it. That's where that has come from. Now the administration is proposing an extra £250,000 here. I specifically asked at the last PBSG meeting about the financial position of the Health and Social Care Partnership, and was told that this year it could manage it from its own resources. So I'm unclear as to the logic behind that. That to me was contrary to the advice I got from officers on the 29th of January. So I would personally not regard that as particularly prudent. Equally on the welfare rights, the £70,000, that was originally a budget ask that was then rejected by officers, and the recommendation to take that as a budget risk. So again, I would question that decision. I am concerned about what seems to be the use of reserve to fund a plethora of one-off spends. When I wrote this speech, it was 1.2 by my rough calculations. I see from the paper circulated it's 1.39 or something like that. That's not prudent in my view. That's prudence as a drunken sailor on a shore leave. I think there's too much reserves being used for one-off items. For the first budget in a long time, I would, and I agree here with Councillor Meehan, we have an opportunity to balance the budget without resorting to reserves, and the opposition has done that in their budget. I'll move on to capital, and I've probably got more to say about capital on the revenue side. Our budget has been slightly more focused there. Last year we introduced the Angus Public Infrastructure Fund, and this raised 20 million of capital by increasing the council tax by 1.5%, £1 million. I will point out that everyone in the current administration voted against this measure, except the then Deputy Leader of the SNP Group and administration. I'll briefly lay down the reasons why I think we need an infrastructure fund. If you want to look at page 378, there's a graph which illustrates the situation. The upper, and it's if you've got colour, the upper blue line is the government's base grant from about 2011 to 2024. And you will see that while it varies from year to year, it's essentially flat cash. The lower purple line is the actual grant discounted by RPI calculations, and this shows the value if the grant in 2011 values. And so the gap between these two lines is what the money bought in 2011 and what it bought in 2024. And you'll see that the gap now is between £5 and £6 million. So to maintain capital spend at 2011 values, we need to fill that gap, and that's essentially what the infrastructure fund, I think, needs to do. I've looked at the latest capital monitoring report. That's the 20th of January meeting, and the spend on the Angus Public Infrastructure Fund, the 20th of November, was zero. And the anticipated spend, the 31st of March 2026, was £90,000 against a monitoring budget of £202,000. So we have spent virtually no money from the infrastructure fund, and that's the projection to the end of this financial year. It's all very well putting something in a budget, but you've actually got to deliver on it. I moved to the plan from the 23rd of September. This was the Policy and Resources meeting, where the spending from the infrastructure fund was outlined, and the proposal there was to spend 6.23 million in the 26-27 financial year. That's out of the 20 million that was raised. And the latest plan for the administration is to deploy an additional 8 million in 26-27 from the new tranche of funding in the budget. So after spending nothing in this financial year, we're expecting a spend of 14.23 million in 26-27 out of a total pot of 35 million. It's worth pointing out that the public will now be paying for the entire sum by a 2.5% increase in their council tax, essentially 1.5% last year and 1% this year. One of the main drivers of setting up the fund last year was to provide funding to deal with two impacts of climate change: the Storm Babette disaster in Brechin and the impact of coastal erosion on Montrose. The capital figure of 20 million was chosen as sufficient to address the then estimated cost of erosion and to provide enough funds to start the repair matters in Brechin. And I'll be honest with you, it was a rough estimate. It was the best, it was the best estimate we could make at the time. Our intention, however, was to build up this fund in later years to address the huge demand for infrastructure projects. And we know that because, as a result of setting the fund up, officers came up with £75 million worth of projects fairly quickly until they stopped counting. So we know there's a massive demand for infrastructure projects, and Councillor Meehan's absolutely correct in saying that. The allocation of new projects to use this infrastructure fund was first put forward at the P&R committee on the 23rd of September. The Leader of the Council prevented any debate on this matter, and elected members were unable to discuss the allocation of funding. When this was again raised at the subsequent council meeting on the 2nd of October, This time the Provost refused any discussion on the matter. That 20 million of council capital spend was agreed without any discussion or voting is, in my view, a democratic outrage, and both chairs should hang their head in shame for denying the elected members a say in this decision.
Councillor Duff, I don't want anybody getting personal here, please.
I think it's factual, Provost. It's factual.
Point of order.
Yes, Councillor Meakin.
Or clarification. We're waiting to hear the opposition's budget. What I'm hearing is, if you like, a takedown of the administration's budget, when really what we're here to hear is, you know, what's on offer from the opposition. Thank you.
It's coming to that. This year, our budget proposals are to raise an additional £6 million by putting £300,000 into loan charges. The note 1 on page 378 describes our intention of repeating this allocation next year. I think what the Council needs is a long-term commitment to increase the Angus Public Infrastructure Fund annually to allow officers to plan the capital spend over something like a 5 to 7 year timeline. So we want a clear, forward-thinking plan. We know how much we're putting in each year, and then officers can plan projects to use that spend. If we turn first to the issue of coastal erosion, and specifically to the issue in Montrose, at last year's budget, the council plan then was to renourish the dunes with 100,000 cubic metres of sand at an anticipated cost of 8 to 10 million. The sum raised within the APIG would allow this to be done. The council planned to apply to Scottish Government for assistance. However, as of now, no application has been made. The report prepared by consultants to support this application is available in draft form, and it's unclear that this would support our application. Furthermore, if you read the Audit Scotland report on flood schemes, which was published towards the end of last year, it stated that the flood scheme was not fit for purpose, as inadequate sums of money were available for the number of schemes. So effectively, there were more schemes and more applications than there was money. So whatever the final plans are to deal with coastal erosion in Montrose, I believe that we will need significantly more than the £2 million that was allocated. And as I said earlier, I think government support is uncertain. So I have a concern there that we don't have enough funding. If we turn to Brechin, we are now 2.5 years after Storm Babette, and we don't seem to be any further forward. Do we have a plan? I think other colleagues will pick up Brechin and discuss our ambitions there. So our plans for 27-28 include using funds from the APIF to support replacing the footbridge over the railway in Carnoustie and to make a contribution to addressing flooding on the Barry Burn in Carnoustie. Our plans for our £6 million spend is to accept the decision that was taken in September 25 at the P&R committee meeting, but to allocate that additional £6 million to dealing with Brechin and to put some more money into the coastal erosion issue. Now, I'm conscious there we do not have a clear plan, so the amount of money is uncertain. So my conclusions finally is that budget decisions need to be actioned. And we've heard a number of things mentioned today, and I could mention apprentices. There was 1.5 million in last year's budget for graduate and modern apprentices. The latest information I have is that none of that money has been spent, and we're only now thinking about advertising for that. So again, you can put money in a budget, but it hasn't been delivered. And I can't quite understand why we're putting an extra £500,000 in when the £1.5 million that was put in the budget last year has not actually been actioned. I can mention other things that were in last year's budget. There was the issue of looking at motor caravans, which there was a small sum of money put in. We're not sure what happened there. There was a little bit of money put in to deal with cleaning of road signs and bus shelters. There seems to be no action on that. So these were small items in last year's budget that I think have not been dealt with. I would make the point that we believe that on the infrastructure fund, a modest increase in that every year makes sense. You don't want to be asking people to pay council tax when you're not actually going to deliver. And I think £6 million increased each year is a more sensible approach than putting an extra 15 million in, where you've got spending. We've only got spending plans for 14 million, and there's already 20 there. It would be better to plan to put a modest sum in each year. And if we can spend more in capital, then we could consider putting in more. But putting in far more than you actually need in the next year essentially means people are paying council tax ahead of the work being done. So to conclude, we are proposing a council tax rise of 8.3% and the use of £20,000 of reserves for some one-off work to balance the budget. And we're leaving the reserves, apart from that 20,000, as they are. And I'll ask Councillor MacDonald to second.
Thank you, Councillor Duff. Councillor MacDonald, thank you.
Yeah, I'm just going to formally second that. I don't feel like I need to add anything further, Provost.
Okay, thank you very much. Colleagues, we have to note this alternative budget as well, submitted by the opposition group. Is that noted? Now, at this stage, I'm going to suggest an adjournment of 30 minutes. A wee bit longer, 45 then? Okay, adjournment of 45 minutes to consider both the proposals, and I believe there's breakout rooms being allocated, I think. Thank you.
Can we stop the
Okay, colleagues, we'll restart the meeting and we'll go straight to questions on either of the budgets. Questions, please, to start with. Councillor Cowdy, thank you.
Thank you very much. This is questions on neither of the budgets yet. So I just wanted some clarity from the administration regarding the £16 million that will be generated from the extra investment into the infrastructure fund. Councillor Gould did touch on uses of that potentially being for coastal erosion issues and severe weather events, I think is roughly how you phrased it. But I just wanted some clarity on whether that will be used for Brechin specifically and potentially for Montrose specifically. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cowdy. Councillor Meakin, thank you.
Thank you, Provost, and thank you, Councillor Cowdy, for your question. The borrowing capacity of 16 million will be used for whatever the demands are for that amount of money. I must say that 16 million borrowing capacity doesn't mean that on day one we run out and borrow 16 million. What it means is that we will draw on that borrowing capacity as and when required. Now, there's nothing earmarked at the moment for coastal erosion or for the effects of Storm Babette. However, that said, if there was an ask for those things, then clearly they would have a very high priority from those available funds. I hope that helps address your question.
Thank you, it does, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Cheap, thank you.
I'm just trying to get my head round this and think about the practical of things. And this is out with the non-administrators. This is my own thinking on this. If at last year's budget we created the fund available for £20 million of extra borrowing, and now under the administration's proposal today is to create another 16 million, and so we've spent hardly anything of the initial £20 million. You're now committing yourself to £36 million, and I can't quite understand how you don't have any proposals yet for how that's going to be spent, and yet you're asking the public to actually pay for that now with no proposals. It'd be quite good to actually get some meat on the bones rather than just the figures.
Thank you, Councillor Cheap. Councillor Meakin.
Thank you for your question, Councillor Cheap. You'll recall that when the fund was set up at the last budget, 21 million, I think, around 21.6, I think it was, there was actually nothing about how it would be spent. That was decided following the agreement of the 21.6 million. So it was actually after budget and so on, decisions were made on the actual spend. Those were based on information from Infrastructure Services, who put forward an ask, as you probably know, of £75 million, which shows you the need that's out there to do all the works, to try and bring us back up to a level playing field. So it's not unusual that with the borrowing capacity to supplement the fund, there is actually no detail of how that will be spent. The decisions will be made on that up and coming when Infrastructure Services have a chance to actually say how they will spend that money. I presume they'll go back to their £75 million ask. They'll do some kind of priority exercise, and they'll actually bring that to us for a decision. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else for questions? Don't see anybody. Any comments? Councillor Shepherd, and then Councillor Beattie and Councillor Cowdy. Councillor Shepherd, thank you.
Thank you, Provost. Obviously, budget day, and it's good to see there's some kind, I would say, uniting things between the two budgets. The last budget was the first time in Angus that the infrastructure fund was created, and it was created by the SNP administration along with the independents, and the history of it at that time, the opposition didn't back the creation of the fund. But I'm very glad to see today that it's unanimous across the chamber. There is support for the infrastructure fund, because I was worried that it might not be in their budget and they might not want to end the infrastructure fund, because that was a real step forward in a fund that, if a borough in Angus has requirements that we're struggling to fund, there is a way to fund that. There was real need for that. So I'm glad to see that both budgets have continued to have the infrastructure in them. And just to make it clear, I want every single budget that comes forward for the next budgets to be topping up and growing the infrastructure to ensure there's always funds to meet the community needs. Thank you, Provost.
Thank you very much, Councillor Shepherd. Councillor Beattie.
Yeah, I'd like to echo Councillor Shepherd there. It's good to see that the infrastructure fund is being retained. I know other councils have not retained their infrastructure funds. Our budget raises like another £6 million for the Angus Infrastructure Fund, and this builds on our contribution last year. It provides a next step in our year-on-year commitment to dealing with the infrastructure issues across the country, and they are huge, as Councillor Meakin has pointed out. But our immediate focus for this always remains Brechin and the settlements such as Tannadice and Fairhaven, we seem to get forgotten about, are also suffered the devastating flooding. Our plan has been to deliver not just an adjustment to the existing flood scheme, but to regenerate the wider Brechin area, dealing with flooding, housing, and the gap sites in Brechin, which have been eyesores for years. We feel that the use of the infrastructure fund should be spread over how many ever years it needs, rather than front-loading a large cost on the Angus taxpayer unnecessarily. I don't think we need to do that at this point. And to echo Councillor Cheap's comment earlier on, we want to deliver what the public in Brechin want, rather than just a basic uplift to the existing flood scheme. There's a lot of work to be done, and I know it takes time, but that's where we are, and we want to keep that money coming in year on year so that our officers can actually plan for the future.
Thank you very much, Councillor Beattie. Councillor Cowdery, and then we'll go to Councillor Braid and then Councillor Boyd online. Thank you.
Thanks very much. So we know my thoughts on the budget funding structure generally, so I won't go into that again. My approach is that I'm in this council and I'll try to bring positive difference wherever possible and back the best of the two budget options at the end of it. In this respect, I do appreciate the administration's efforts to consult me on their budget from an early stage. I think their budget does demonstrate ambition and creativity. In particular, I welcome the admin's decision to save the Glendore Visitor Centre, Ranger Centre. I've made no secret of how important this is to me, and when I've been contacted by people in Angus about it, I promised I would use any influence I have to save it, and that is what I've done. I also appreciate the efforts and initiatives like the Environmental Regeneration Fund you've mentioned, and the apprenticeship funding. On the other hand, I'm disappointed to see the administration's funding of the holiday food and fun is just a one-off rather than an ongoing spend, as the opposition have suggested. Finally, I'm very mindful that the administration's offering comes with risks, particularly the larger use of council reserves. And if, therefore, this is the budget that passes, I believe the admin needs to work harder than ever to make every penny count. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cowdery. Councillor Brays, thank you.
Yes, thanks, Provost. It's always worth remembering that the reserves that the council holds, that's money that belongs to the people of Angus. And each person living in Angus owns that money by equal share, rich and poor alike. And when reserves disappear, they have to be replaced at some point. And either that or else you take more and more and more cuts. And I'm a bit uncomfortable about the administration's use of reserves, but I do understand why. I think that I prefer the idea that we should be funding the infrastructure fund as needed, rather than sort of front loading it. But all these things to a large extent, are just dancing on the head of a pin. Councillor Meakin noted that there were £75 million of asks from the infrastructure fund from officers. That's just a drop in the ocean of what's actually required, though. It's hundreds of millions of pounds we are short of in investment over the next 20 years, and nobody has ever mentioned how we're going to fund the other 5 secondary schools that are going to need funded and replaced at some time over the next 30 years. And that's why we really need to keep that infrastructure fund going. And that's why, if we want to have Angus as a decent place for anyone to live or work or visit, we really need to keep going with this council tax increases and instead of engaging in a race to the bottom, as councils of whatever stripe in Angus have done for the last 20 years. And so I'm really glad to see that both budgets have something approaching a realistic council tax increase.
Thank you, Councillor Braze. Councillor Boyd, thank you.
Yes, Provost. My 16th budget, and it sounds like things have never changed over the last 16 years. I'm glad that Councillor Cowdy got approaches from the new administration, but I didn't. And just like 16 years ago when I was elected, actually taking a seat from the SNP because £1 million business park had been put out by that coalition agreement of whenever that was, way back in 2011. There was Carnoustie lost out with this £1 million business park. So there's a certain element of deja vu. I'm interested to hear the comments made by the new leader of things moving forward. And but in the meantime, I only have something in black and white from this administration that the flooding in Carnoustie and the bridge in Carnoustie, this is the only thing I have in black and white. There's no promises elsewhere. I also think, and every councillor should be looking after the people that have voted for them. So I watched with great interest the Brechin situation. I think you knew when I was provost, I was always backing things in Brechin, getting the recycling centre reopened again, and fighting for that, because that is the area where there is the greater need. And I will certainly be voting for the opposition budget for that reason, and that reason alone, that the millions that are going to be spent be injected into Brechin, along with the money that would have been injected into Carnoustie. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Councillor Boyd.
Provost, point of order, please.
Councillor Cheap.
Just to be quick, I think Councillor Boyd means in his approach the £1 million for Carnoustie's in the non-administration budget, not in the administration budget.
Yes, thanks for that clarification. As usual, getting a little tongue-tied. Thank you, Councillor Cheap.
Thank you. Councillor Speed.
Thank you, Provost. I would just like to take this opportunity to thank and acknowledge the hard work of Councillor Meakin and the administration team for their hard work on the budget and for engaging with me at an early stage. The administration have clearly listened and understand the many issues within our communities and have included many projects and initiatives within their budget that will help and go some way in making a difference across a range of services. It's difficult for me to argue with some of the proposals that they have put forward that chime closely to many of the areas of interest that I hold. I do, though, have some concerns of the use of one-off reserves for some of this work, as we are merely using stick and plasters to try and cover a gaping wound. This is not a criticism of this administration, as they are only operating within the parameters of a difficult financial landscape, and in my view, they have done the best they can with their budget. However, I'm trying to do something that feels both simple and impossibly difficult, and that is to hold the line. To hold the line for dignity and fairness. As expressed in my motion earlier, lived experience and my role in serving have taught me that fairness is something that you fight for, not something that you wait for. I stand for the truth that we cannot keep doing more with less, and we cannot continue to place significant pressure on our workforce and the communities we serve. We cannot pretend that resilience is endless. I will not obstruct the setting of the budget. However, I will abstain for the reasons mentioned in my motion and due to the well-documented risks within the papers before us today.
Thank you, Councillor Speed. Councillor Scott, thank you.
Yeah, could I thank you, Provost? Just wanted to pick up on a few points. Firstly, Councillor Boyd, we're standing up for the town or the ward that we are representing. Absolutely support Brechin and the need for more after Storm Babette, and there's a lot of work to do, but actually we are putting 10 million more than the non-administration budget, the opposition budget. So, you know, if Mr Daly comes forward with something, then the money is there to draw down and we can do that. If I just in response to Councillor Cowdy, with Holiday Food and Fun, I absolutely agree with you, Councillor Cowdy. However, in discussion, Holiday Food and Fun is 1 year only because Planet Youth Pilot is still running. So obviously, you know, there's no point in funding because we might change. It depends on what the outcome of Planet Youth is. So that's the reason for this short-term funding, if that helps. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Doran and then Councillor Proctor.
Okay, thank you. I was going to come in on a similar thing as well, and I just wanted to kind of reiterate that I'm in full agreement, as we've heard time and time again today from both councillors and from union colleagues this morning, how difficult it is for our councils and public services in Scotland related to the funding situation for them. And in Angus, we have faced a double whammy from a relatively low council tax and also the funding from the Scottish Government. And I just wanted to mention as well, some of this is visible, so we all see the impact of some of that on our services and things that we see around Angus, but some of it is invisible as well, and it goes to supporting some of our most vulnerable in Angus. So I just wanted to thank Councillor Cowdy and Councillor Speed for discussing that today and raising it at the start of this meeting as well. And it does leave us as councillors with really tough options and decisions. I think this budget will help Angus navigate some of this situation, and it does prioritise support for our young people and opportunities for young people, and includes those who need the most support transitioning from children to young people. I was also going to address the comment about Holiday Food and Fun. This has been discussed quite a lot. As mentioned, there is also a Planet Youth programme which is waiting for further input and kind of responses from a pilot programme there, and that's why that is in as a one-off funding. It doesn't mean it's either or, but it just means that the opportunity there for future years is to discuss how those two can support our young people in Angus. And just finally, that Angus Council can't navigate all of this alone long term, and our services all need better funding going forward.
Thank you very much. Councillor Proctor.
Thank you, Provost. Just like Councillor Doran said, I'd just like to thank Councillor Speed, Councillor Cowdy for highlighting the shortage of funding that we get from central government each year, and irrespective of whoever sets a budget, is very, very difficult and there's very little wriggle room. I do feel that this budget, however, is a budget for all the people in Angus, and for example, highlighting a couple of things, the Glendall Centre, where not just local people benefit from that, but people throughout Angus and beyond benefit from that. And I think there's a bit of foresight there in keeping that open. Also, the roads, we've all mentioned how the effect that the bad weather and insufficient money in maintaining our roads, we're looking at that as well. Also with education, children, other aspects that have been highlighted, the council, the administration is looking at and are looking for the way forward. So I do think it's a budget for all the people in Angus, and I commend it, and thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Proctor. Councillor Gregg, thank you.
Thank you, Provost. I have to say I'm really pleased with the work that we as an administration have done over the past months, trying to decide what to do with the limited funds that we have, and the support of our leader, Councillor Meehan. As the convener of the civic licensing, I was incredibly pleased that I got unanimous support within our group when I suggested introducing this wheelchair accessible grant fund. It's a small step, but it's a small step in the right direction, because I recognise as the convener of that committee just how difficult it is for some people, particularly wheelchair users, to be able to get around Angus in the limited availability of those vehicles. There is currently a working members officer working group within the Civic Licensing Committee where we've been looking at other aspects within the taxi trade and how we can change and make things better, with part of that being towards wheelchair accessible vehicles, with getting close to the Scottish Government's target of 20%. Recommendations will be going forward to that committee for them to make that decision, but it would be my hope that in conjunction with this, it would make quite a considerable difference to those people that do need that type of accessible transport within Angus. And I'm really disappointed to have heard from Councillor Speed there saying that she won't support our budget when we're putting forward initiatives like this to try and benefit as much of Angus as possible. That's what we committed to do, and as Councillor Meehan said when he introduced the budget, we're trying to make it as balanced as possible to benefit as many people as possible across as much of Angus as possible. So I would hope that you will support us with our budget for this year. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gregg. Now, Councillor Speed, do you want to come back?
Is that okay? Can I come back just to address Councillor Gregg's comments? Yeah, thank you, Provost. Yeah, thank you, Councillor Gregg. It has been a good piece of work working with you on the licence in MOG and that bit of work around the wheelchair accessible vehicles. It has been a tough decision today because that is one of the project proposals that the administration have put forward, and as many of you will know, it is an area that I've continued to campaign and shine a spotlight on in terms of the unmet provision. However, I guess I'm looking at this budget not just through the lens of an unmet need in terms of wheelchair taxi provision, but also across the board. And when we have children and families and many individuals who absolutely will benefit from hopefully an increase in wheelchair taxi provision. We know that transport is a barrier for many. However, there are many other areas of unmet need in terms of health and social care, in terms of education, and that ongoing funding for our most vulnerable. So I do welcome it. I will look forward to it with interest in terms of how that grant funding might play out. However, that alone is not going to solve or fill the massive hole within this council and the unmet funding that we have.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? I don't see any. Thank you. Councillor Meehan, do you wish to sum up?
Yes.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Whiteside.
Thanks.
Sorry.
Provost, could I give notice of a potential amendment depending on the outcome of the vote, please?
Do you want to sum up, Councillor Meehan?
Yes, thank you, Provost. I won't say very much because I think I've said it all already. Just remains for me to say that this is a budget that faces reality, honesty and refuses to lose ambition. This is the right budget for the whole of Angus. It's responsible, it's ambitious and it's focused on delivery. Thank you. I commend the budget.
Thank you very much. Mrs Forsyth, at this stage, do we go to the vote? Because these reports have been proposed and seconded, haven't they?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Provost. A motion by Councillor Meehan, seconded by Councillor Gall, is to approve the administration budget as outlined and as circulated to members. The amendment by Councillor Duff, seconded by Councillor MacDonald, is to approve the opposition budget as outlined and as circulated to members. Please vote motion or amendment. Provost.
Motion.
Deputy Provost. Councillor Beattie.
Amendment.
Councillor Bell.
Amendment.
Councillor Boyd.
Amendment.
Councillor Braze.
Amendment.
Councillor Cheap.
Amendment.
Councillor Clark.
Amendment.
Councillor Cowdy.
Motion.
Councillor Cruikshanks.
Motion.
Councillor Devine.
Amendment.
Councillor Doran.
Motion.
Councillor Duff.
Amendment.
Councillor Durno.
Amendment.
Councillor Gall. Councillor Gregg.
Motion.
Councillor MacDonald.
Amendment.
Councillor McLaren.
Motion.
Councillor Meakin.
Motion.
Councillor Melville.
Amendment.
Councillor Gavin Nicholl.
Motion.
Councillor Louise Nicholl.
Motion.
Councillor Proctor.
Motion.
Councillor Shepherd.
Amendment.
Councillor Speed.
Abstain.
Councillor Stewart.
Motion.
Councillor Wan. Councillor Whiteside.
Amendment.
The motion is carried by 14 votes to 13. Provost.
Thank you very much, Mrs Forsyth. Now, Councillor Whiteside, you've given notice of an amendment. Do you want to, have you got something to circulate, or are you just going to speak to it?
Yeah, there's something to circulate. I think Sarah's going to.
And do you have a seconder?
Yes, I do.
Okay, Councillor Melville. Thank you. Colleagues, I'm advised that Mrs Watson's requested a 15-minute recess so she can consider the terms of Councillor Whiteside's amendment. Is that okay? Agreed? Yeah. Thank you very much.
Can we pause the stream, please?
Okay, thank you for your patience. Councillor Whiteside, do you wish to speak to your further amendment? Thank you.
Thank you, Provost. I'm actually very hopeful that this is something that the whole Chamber can agree on to finish off the budget meeting collaboratively. So we're all very well aware of the ongoing financial pressures which I speak about in the motion. And while I'm a bit nervous about the money that's been taken from reserves, I think it's very important to look at the sustainability of the Council going forward, and I think that the items that I've included in the motion could help towards that financial and environmental sustainability going forward. In terms of the first item, there's been a very successful project in North Ayrshire where they've sited solar panels on their former landfill sites in 2 locations. They've got a reasonable payback period, they're creating an income for the council, and to that end becoming more sustainable. So I think for things like this it's really worth dipping into reserves in a modest way like I've suggested. The second item, I was quite comfortable with the decision of Angus Alive to come out of the Cairngorms Ranger Service because I believe that Cairngorms can provide that service effectively and potentially more efficiently. But I do think a review of the Ranger Service, an item that was included in our substantial budget, is worth doing and can again increase our sustainability going forward. And finally, there was a target saving in the budget of only £3,000 from the economic development team. I think that's counterproductive, and I think and very much hope that that can be reinstated in future budgets on an ongoing basis, but I will include that in my amendment, giving a total of a modest £50,000, which would be met from the exceptional cost pressures balancing future budgets provision. I'm hopeful that there's nothing contentious here and that we can all agree on it, but I request that you support this amendment today. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Whiteside. Councillor Melville, thank you.
Formally seconded, Provost.
A recess. Do you want any questions for Councillor Whiteside? Yes. Councillor Gregg, thank you.
Thank you. I'm not sure if Councillor Whiteside might be able to answer this question, but perhaps Mr Daly might be. With regards to the solar panels and battery storage at the Resteneth landfill site, if I recall back to a few years ago, may have been just after I was elected in 22, the Forfar councillors, there was a discussion around the potential of solar panels and battery storage at Resteneth on the site that's mentioned in Councillor Whiteside's amendment. And it was my understanding that at that time, for whatever reasons, that was not viable and it couldn't be done, potentially to do with the gases and things that were being released from under the former landfill site. So I'd just like a bit of clarification around that, please.
Just check the mic's working. Yep. Just to clarify, maybe and update members and remind them the situation regarding the solar farm at Resteneth. We did look into the matter in a lot of detail. We brought a report up. It was an exempt report. I think it was March 2024, and it was proposing that we entered a land lease deal with a party that would develop a solar farm on the site. We had looked at that point into full ownership by Angus Council, and there was quite a long payback period for that when we looked in at that point. So it was agreed to proceed with the land lease deal. There was conditions applied and in terms of the timescale for the developer proceeding with the solar farm. Subsequently, the party withdrew from the agreement. They stated the reason being that the ground conditions meant that the capital investment meant it was no longer viable for them to proceed. Since then, we have been looking at alternatives, and we've spoken to at least 2 partners. In fact, recently we met with a potential partner. Again, I would say that the simplest way of proceeding is a land lease deal, lowest risk to the council. There are other models, And as I think Councillor Whiteside highlighted, North Ayrshire went down the model of full ownership for that. And it is something we are exploring, but hopefully that just clarifies a little bit of the history and what's been happening regarding the site. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Daly. Councillor Meakin. Thank you.
Thank you, Provost. Just to be clear, and Mr Daly should be able to answer this, there was work done, and like you say, there was an interested party who pulled out. My understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, is we are still looking for someone to actually provide such a service on that site for a solar type farm. Is that correct?
That is correct. We're actively discussing with parties on the matter.
A supplementary, Councillor Meakin, then Councillor
Just to say, on that basis, I see no need to spend £27,000 on a feasibility study for something that we're actually actively engaged in, trying to find an operator that will take over that site for that specific purpose. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cowdy. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Yeah, my question's on the Ranger Service. Obviously, the Ranger Service in the country parks is provided by Angus Alive. So I'm guessing this is sort of either an additional service or in other areas where they're not providing them. It'd be great to get some clarity on that, and also just to seek what discussion has been had with Angus Alive to make sure there's no overlap.
Mr Daly, is this one for yourself? Or? Yes, thank you. Mrs Watson's going to answer it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cowdy. Just to confirm that at the meeting of Communities Committee where the change notes were considered by the committee, there was a recommendation in there for the council to undertake a review of the Ranger Service, and certainly we've been in discussion with Angus Alive about how that would take place. So in terms of a consultant to review the Ranger Service, that is something that the council is planning to do anyway, following on from that Communities Committee decision, but fully in discussion with Angus Alive.
Councillor Whiteside, thank you.
Thank you. If I could just come back to Councillor Meakin, I think obviously the allowance for a feasibility study would only be spent if required, but it was just to explore all options. For example, not just leasing the land to an operator, but having the council either as a partner or as a sole operator, the sole owner of the site in the way that North Ayrshire have done it. So it was just exploring all options fully and giving the director the confidence that he had backing to go ahead and explore all options.
Thank you. Councillor Vaughan.
Yeah, it was a question for Alison on the Rangers one. When you're saying that they're already investigating the possibility of the Ranger service in country parks, does that mean it's already funded or identified in something?
Thank you, Councillor Wan. I think the recommendation to carry out a review was approved, but with no budget allocated specifically to that. So it was to be done within the resources available within the council, but with nothing specifically allocated.
Councillor Duff, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Robert. Maybe a wee bit of clarity on the Ranger review. As Mrs Watson has explained, this was discussed at communities. It was decided that we need to review it. When I spoke to officers about this issue, the view was that if there was a review to be done, it would have to be done off the side of somebody's desk. And the people concerned were pretty pressured at the moment with lots of other work, and the view was it would be better to bring in a consultant to do this work, get it done, and then give us the answers, if you like. This came on the back of effectively the decision on the Montrose Basin, where historically Angus Council and then Angus Alive provided a ranger. That has now been removed because effectively the change request was agreed. And the question then is that satisfactory? There are some issues there, and I think there's perhaps some issues elsewhere where not quite sure what we call it, the communities team felt that they would perhaps need a ranger somewhere else. So it was to look at that, and as we didn't have resource in-house to do it, to bring a consultant in, have a look at it and give us an answer. I think that was the thinking behind it.
Thank you, Councillor Duff. Councillor Meakin, did you have your hand up again? Thank you.
Thank you, Provost. Just to say the Rangers service within Glendale, my understanding is that the provision going forward, not provided by us, will be actually greater than it was before it was returned to us. Now, as part of the actual review, our expectation is that officers would be discussing with whoever was interested, including the Cairngorms Partnership, who will actually be, if you like, providing these wardens, whether there was some work that could be done with them that they might want to use the Glendale Centre as a base. Now, if we're actually going through a review at the moment, that's something that could actually be added to that, which wouldn't mean that we're spending £20,000 to find out something that we could just ask of the Cairngorms Partnership.
Councillor Cruikshanks and then Councillor Whiteside. Thank you.
Thank you, Provost. So Councillor Whiteside has requested additional funding to explore all options in relation to the feasibility study. But my understanding from Mr Daly's answer there was that that's already happened. So can we get clarification on that point, please?
Okay, thank you. Mr Daly, can you answer that, please?
I wouldn't say a feasibility study has been carried out. Just to clarify, my update was that we are actively engaging with potential partners. So it isn't a case that a formal feasibility has been done.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Whiteside?
Yeah, I was just coming back to Councillor Meakin again. I think he was maybe misunderstanding what Councillor Duff explained about the Ranger. It's not to do with the Glendale Ranger. That's been dealt with. This is the other Rangers within the country parks.
Councillor Meakin?
Yeah, I'm a bit surprised that some of this has come up because it actually, well, I think the first one wasn't actually in the opposition's budget, but it's now come up. That said, the administration would be prepared to accept numbers 2 and 3 if that was acceptable moving forward.
Councillor Whiteside, do you want to come back?
Well, I'm interested in that conclusion. I wonder if anybody needs a few minutes to discuss.
Long. Okay, we'll have another 10-minute recess. Thank you.
Can we stop the
Okay, thank you, and thanks for your patience. Councillor Whiteside, have you got anything further? Thank you.
Thanks, Provost. Yeah, I would just like to leave the budget as is. It's a non-political, the amendment should say, it's a non-political amendment. I'm pretty sure that people can make up their own minds about whether they think it's worthwhile or not. But it's a way to try and move the council a little bit forward towards commercialisation and sustainability and towards our net zero targets. It's a relatively small amount in the grand scheme of things, and I hope I get some support for this motion.
Thank you. Councillor Meekin.
Thank you, Provost. Sorry, I missed a bit of that, unfortunately, but am I right in thinking that Councillor Whiteside was saying that she wants to leave the 3 items in? Yeah, okay.
That's my understanding. Okay. Councillor Cowdy?
Are we on comments?
Yes. We'll go to comments now. Thank you. Sorry, George wasn't done. Just seen the microphone going off.
Our position is still that we are happy to combine numbers 2 and number 3 into the budget.
Okay, thank you. Comments? Oh, right. Members, as we are now approaching the 3-hour time limit, I would ask the Council to agree to the suspending of standing orders to continue the meeting to the conclusion of the business. Is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you. Okay, comments. Councillor Cowdy.
Thanks very much. So with regard to the council-run solar farm, this is interesting because this is actually a suggestion that Councillor Shepherd made to me way back in 2022. So I'm really pleased to see this in here. I do back this as a concept. I'm a little bit twitchy about the conflicting initiatives that might occur, given that, as we've discussed, there is a discussion ongoing in a leasehold capacity. But I do think fundamentally commercialisation with a council-run solar farm could be a positive. So on that, I'm very happy to back it, just as I was very happy to back it in 2022. I have no issue with the other 2 points. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Brays, then Councillor Cheap. Thank you.
Yeah, it's worth remembering that we're talking about the Rostenna site here in particular, but that might well lead to other things that could be of even bigger benefit. This is sort of sticking a toe in the water. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Cheap.
Yeah, actually, Councillor Gray just took the words out of my mouth. We've talked for a long, long time about greater commercialisation of this council, and this is just a very small step towards it, and I see no reason why this wouldn't actually take place for the benefit of the council rather than sharing with other partners and things. So it's very small in the whole shape of our budget, and I can't understand anybody resisting that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cheap. Councillor Boyd, I noticed earlier that you had your hand up. Do you still want to make a comment?
Yes, I will. I just find this 16 years down the line, we're talking about millions and millions of pounds. And I remember officers telling me 16 years ago, we spent half an hour speaking about the pennies. And yet we rubber stamp millions and millions. I'm just disappointed that the meeting has now landed up like this. That's my comment.
Thank you very much. Councillor Shepherd.
Thank you, Provost. As Councillor Cowdy's hinted, I'm a big advocate of solar. You know, when I was out campaigning, I remember I said it, if in my term I would like to see the council doing commercialisation and doing solar. And we had a group meeting like about 3 years ago about solar. And you know, at that time we weren't able to progress things, but this is an opportunity that Councillor Whiteside's given us today for everyone to unite behind. And it's one of these where I think we could really learn lessons as a council here. If we do a small project at Rostenna, see the revenues come in, and we can maybe scale up and get something bigger. So I think it's a real opportunity, commercialisation, solar, and it's doing something that councils don't have to do. And I think that's a way forward in facing the difficulties that have been mentioned in other motions today. So I really hope everyone jumps on board and gets behind this opportunity today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Melville. Thank you.
Thank you, Provost. I won't add too much more, but in a world of sustained shock on a global stage in terms of energy, I think the Council needs to be taking every opportunity we possibly can to ensure that we can, if not isolate ourselves from that, at the very least reduce the impact of that. And not only that, but this would be an opportunity to have an energy generation scheme in the hands of the people of Angus and not in the hands of big business, and that is something that we should reach for.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Meehan.
Thank you, Provost. We would be happy to combine the three asks into the budget.
Is that unanimous? Agreed? Okay, thank you. Therefore, we don't have to go to any vote. Sorry, Councillor Boyd, I didn't catch what you said. Okay, thank you very much. I think that's the end of the meeting.
Can we stop the live stream?